In Tupelo, Mississippi, on January 8, 1935, Gladys Presley gives birth to twin sons in a two-room house built by her husband Vernon and her brother-in-law. The first, Jesse Garin, is born stillborn. The second, Elvis Aaron, is born alive and healthy. Elvis would be their only child. Growing up, there is little money, but Vernon and Gladys do their best to provide for their son, who is the center of their lives. Elvis attends the Assembly of God Church with his family, and the music and preaching register deeply with him. Childhood influences include black bluesmen in the neighborhood and country music radio programs enjoyed by his family. 10-year-old Elvis stands on a chair at a microphone and sings Old Shep in a youth talent contest at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show held in Tupelo. Winning fifth prize, Elvis receives $5 in fair ride tickets. In 1946, Elvis's parents cannot afford a bicycle that Elvis wants, so Gladys talks him into accepting a guitar instead. Elvis's first guitar cost $12.95 and is purchased at the Tupelo Hardware Company. In 1948, Elvis and his parents pack their belongings in a trunk, strap it to the roof of their 1939 Plymouth, and move to Memphis, Tennessee, in search of a better life economically. Elvis and his parents live in public housing or low-rent homes in the poor neighborhoods of North Memphis. Elvis attends L.C. Humes High School. He works various jobs to help support himself and his parents. The teenage Elvis continues to be known for singing with his guitar. He wears his hair long, compared to the day's standards, and slick, and lets his sideburns grow. While at Humes High, Elvis nervously sings with his guitar at a student talent show. Much to his own amazement, he gets more applause than anyone else and wins. Upon graduating high school, Elvis went to work for Crown Electric Company. At Crown, he did various jobs, including driving a delivery truck and delivering supplies to job sites. He also went to night school and studied to be an apprentice electrician. In 1953, he drops by the Memphis Recording Service, home of the Sun label, and makes a demo of My Happiness, and That's When Your Heartache Begins, for a cost of about $4 as a birthday present for his mother. Sam Phillips records Elvis and afterwards tells her assistant, Marion Kiesker, something that made her write down in her notes, "Good ballad singer, hold."
Love me tender, love me sweet, never let me go. You have made my life complete, and I love you so. Love me tender, love me true,
At Marion Kiesker's suggestion, Sam Phillips calls Elvis into the studio to try singing a song Sam hopes to put on a record. Elvis did not sing it to Sam's satisfaction. Sam asks Elvis what he can sing, and Elvis runs through a number of popular tunes. Sam is impressed enough to team Elvis up with local musicians Scotty Moore on the guitar and Bill Black on the bass to see if together they can come up with something worthwhile. Elvis meets Scotty and Bill, but nothing really clicks until after a tedious session, Elvis and the guys break into a sped-up version of Arthur Big Boy Crudup's That's All Right. This song, backed with The Blue Moon of Kentucky, becomes the first of 5 singles of early Elvis songs recorded and released on the Sun label. Elvis, Scotty, and Bill start performing together, with Scotty acting as the group's manager. Elvis continues to work at Crown Electric as the group starts to play small clubs and books other small-time gigs locally and throughout the South, enjoying moderate success with the records and personal appearances. In October 1954, Elvis gets to perform at the Grand Ole Opry. It doesn't go over particularly well, with one of the Opry officials reportedly suggesting that Elvis go back to driving a truck. The Opry is very, very important at this time. This is a painful disappointment in Elvis's career. But Elvis, Scotty, and Bill continued to record and travel. They appear for the first time on Louisiana Hayride, a live Saturday night country music radio show originating in Louisiana. In November, Elvis signs a 1-year contract for 52 Saturday night appearances. This is a great break, but as Elvis's popularity grows, his commitment to the hayride prevents him from traveling much outside the South to further his career on a larger scale. Elvis begins working with the Colonel Tom Parker, a promoter and manager for the Louisiana Hayride. Through Parker, they tour with other various stars of the hayride, including Hank Snow. As always, Elvis's live appearances have special appeal for the teenagers, especially females. His original and unusual style, sexy moves, and good looks start to cause more and more excitement wherever he plays. Sometimes the crowd break through barriers in near riot behavior. In the fall of 1955, Elvis signs a management contract with Hank Snow Attractions, owned by Hank Snow and Tom Parker. Parker is his exclusive manager at this time. Not long after, he signs a contract with RCA Records, which includes his 5 singles he already recorded and other early Elvis songs that were not released. The deal goes for a whopping $35,000 with a $5,000 bonus for Elvis. Elvis is becoming the hottest new star in the music business. In 1956, 2 days after his 21st birthday, Elvis records Heartbreak Hotel. When it is released a few weeks later, it sells over 300,000 copies in 3 weeks and becomes Elvis's first #1 hit on the Billboard charts. It also becomes his first single to sell over 1 million copies, thus earning Elvis his first gold record award.
Well, since my baby left me, I found a new place to dwell. It's down at the end of a lonely street at Heartbreak Hotel. I've been so lonely, baby. Well, I'm so lonely. I've been so lonely, I could die. And though it's always crowded, you still can find some room for broken-hearted lovers to cry away the gloom. They've been so lonely, baby. They've been so lonely. They've been so lonely, they could die. Though it's always crowded, you still can find some room for broken-hearted lovers to cry away the gloom. Well, they've been so lonely, baby. They'll be so lonely. They'll be so lonely they could die. Now the bellhops just keep flowing, and the desk clerks dressed in black. Well, they've been so long on lonely street, they're never going back. And they're so lonely, baby. Well, they're so lonely. Well, they're so lonely, they could die. Well, if your baby leaves you and you've got a tale to tell, just take a walk down the lonely street to Heartbreak Hotel, where he'll be still can find some room for broken-hearted lovers to cry away their blue. Well, they've been so lonely, baby. Well, they're so lonely. They've been so lonely they could die. They've been so lonely they could die.
Elvis appears with his band on The Stage Show, starring Tommy and Jimmy Dorsey on CBS. This is Elvis's first network television appearance. He appears 5 more nights on Stage Show over the weeks ahead and makes minor waves nationally. In March of 1956, RCA ships Elvis Presley, the first album in Elvis's discography. This album, full of early Elvis songs, soon goes to number 1 on the Billboard's pop album chart for 10 weeks. It is the first Elvis album to reach over $1 million in sales, thus earning Elvis his first Gold Album award. Also in March of this year, Elvis arrives in Los Angeles to begin a 2-part screen test for Paramount Studios in Hollywood. He lip-syncs Blue Suede Shoes and performs a scene from the unmade film The Rainmaker. On April 2nd, Elvis signs a 1-picture movie contract with Hal Wallace and Paramount Pictures. The contract includes options for 6 more pictures. Elvis appears again on the Milton Berle Show. Among his selections is a playfully sensuous performance of Hound Dog that drives the kids in the audience wild and disgusts the press and some of the adult viewers. It is one of his most controversial performances. This merely serves to fuel his seemingly unstoppable popularity even more. By this time, his sexy moves and black-influenced sound is being condemned by certain factions of the morally concerned establishment and the religious community, but the kids love it. Elvis appears on the Steve Allen Show on NBC. Among his performances this night is a much toned-down version of Hound Dog. Allen has Elvis dressed in a white tie and black tux with tails, and has him sing the song to a live basset hound. Elvis goes along with it, but is not too happy. The Elvis recording sessions, record releases, and touring continue. The condemnation and controversy continues as well, along with the ever-growing popularity. Ed Sullivan, who has said that he would never have the likes of Elvis Presley on his show, changes his tune when he sees the big ratings that Elvis attracts to the Berle and Allen shows. A 3-appearance deal is worked out for $50,000 and is the highest amount ever paid to a performer up to that time for appearing on a variety show. During his first appearance on the show, he receives 80% of the national viewing audience. In the summer of 1956, Elvis's parents join him as he returns to Tupelo as a big star. He performs 2 shows at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show, the same fair at which he performed at the age of 10. This time, there are 100 National Guardsmen surrounding the stage to control the crowds of excited fans.
You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, crying all the time. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine. They said you was a high class, well that was just a lie. They said you was high class, well that was just a lie. Well, you ain't never caught a rabbit and you ain't no friend of mine.
In August 1956, Elvis began shooting his first movie, Love Me Tender. It is originally titled The Reno Brothers, but is retitled before its release to capitalize on Elvis's sure-to-be-a-hit single from the soundtrack. It becomes a smash hit, and the critics' reviews aren't bad for his acting in this melodrama, which is set in the American South of the 1800s Civil War era. By this time, souvenir merchandising using Elvis's name, image, and likeness has become a big part of the Elvis phenomenon. Licensees will soon be producing as many as 30 different products, including hats, t-shirts, jeans, kerchiefs, sneakers, shirts, blouses, belts, purses, billfolds, wallets, charm bracelets, necklaces, magazines, gloves, bookends, a statue, lipstick, cologne, stuffed hound dogs, stationery, sweaters, crockery, and more. Elvis and the Colonel are about to blaze new trails in the era of celebrity merchandising. In December, the front page of the Wall Street Journal reports that in the past few months, Elvis merchandise has grossed $22 million in sales. After his final appearance on The Ed Sullivan Show, in which he is only seen from the waist up, Sullivan takes time to thank Elvis and tells the studio audience and millions of American television viewers that this is a decent, fine boy, and what a delight it has been to work with him while appearing on the show. Around this time, Elvis begins work on a second film, Loving You, and also starts dyeing his hair black. His international popularity grows significantly during this time as well, including international shows and a New York Times story entitled, Presley Records a Craze in the Soviet Union. Apparently, Elvis records were not legally available in the Soviet Union. The article tells of bootleg recordings being cut on discarded X-ray plates and being sold in Leningrad on the black market for 50 rubles, which was about $12.50 each, which was a lot of money for the time. In March of 1957, Elvis buys Graceland Mansion for himself, his parents, and his paternal grandmother to live in. Elvis doesn't spend his first night in Graceland until June 26, 1957, after working on his third movie, Jailhouse Rock. When it releases later in the year, it peaks at number 3. By 1969, its earnings in the US and Canada were roughly comparable with those of The Wizard of Oz. The title song is a smash hit. Years later, this film will be considered one of Elvis's best acting performances.
The woman threw a party in the county jail. Prison band was there and they began to wail. The band was jumping, the joint began to swing. Should have heard those knocked out jailbirds sing. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Spider Murphy played the tenor saxophone. Little Joe was blowing on a slide trombone. The drummer boy from Illinois crashed, boom, bang. The whole rhythm section was the Purple Gang. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Number 47 said to number 3, you're the cutest jailbird I ever did see. I sure would be delighted with your company. So come on and do the jailhouse rock with me. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. The sad sack was sitting on a block of stone, way over in the corner, weeping alone. The warden said, hey buddy, don't you be no square. If you can't find a partner, use the wooden chair. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Shifty Henry said to Bucks, for heaven's sake, no one's chance to make a break. Bugsy turned to Shifty and said, Nix, Nix, I wanna stick around while you get my kicks. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jailhouse rock. Let's rock, everybody, let's rock. Everybody in the wholesale block was dancing to the jailhouse rock.
In December 1958, Elvis receives a draft notice and is inducted into the U.S. Army in March, after completing his fourth film, King Creole. The film will come to be regarded as one of the best Elvis movies, his greatest acting performance, and proof of his potential to have become a respected, serious actor. Elvis begins basic training at Fort Hood in Texas, where he remains for 6 months. After basic training, on his first leave, he records another song, A Big Hunk of Love, his last recording session for 2 years. In August 1958, his mom, Gladys Presley, is hospitalized with acute hepatitis. Elvis is granted emergency leave and returns to Memphis. He visits her that night and the next day and night. A few hours after Elvis goes home to Graceland to rest, she dies in the early hours on August 14th at the age of 46. On October 1st, Elvis arrives in Germany, where he is stationed for 18 months, living off base with his father, grandmother, and some friends. Elvis's Army years expose him to fans in Europe, and he finds them to be as enthusiastic as those in the U.S. In January 1959, Elvis is interviewed via phone by Dick Clark on American Bandstand for his 24th birthday. In August 1959, Captain Joseph Beaulieu moves from Texas to the Air Force Base near Friedberg, Germany, accompanied by his wife and children, including his 14-year-old stepdaughter, Priscilla Ann. In September, Priscilla is invited to a party at Elvis's home where they meet for the first time. Priscilla's parents were upset by her late return home that night and insisted that she never see Elvis again. But his eagerness for another rendezvous and his promise to never bring her home late again led them to relent. Thereafter, he and Priscilla were frequently together until his departure from West Germany in 1960 when she was 15. Elvis got his full sergeant stripes on February 11, 1960. On March 2nd, his military career came to an end and he returned home to Memphis. Elvis had his first post-Army recording session. Some of the recording work is for the album Elvis is Back, which will hit number 2 on the Billboard Pop chart. The album includes the single Stuck on You, which is rushed to the pressing plant and packaged in a generic sleeve without waiting for orders. Debuting at number 84, it took only 3 weeks to hit number 1. In April, he begins his next film, G.I. Blues. In July, Elvis receives his first-degree black belt in karate, an interest he developed while he was in the Army. Elvis carries the certificate in his wallet until his death.
Well, it's a 1 for the money, 2 for the show, 3 to get ready now. Go, cat, go, but don't you step on the blue suede shoes. You can do anything, but lay off of my blue suede shoes. You can knock me down, step in my face, saying my name all over the place. Do anything that you wanna do, but honey, lay off of my shoes. Now don't you step on the blue suede shoes. You can do anything, but lay off of my blue suede shoes. Burn my car, steal my card, drink my liquor from an old fruit jar. Do anything that you wanna do, but honey, lay off of my shoes. Now don't you step on my blue suede shoes. You can do anything, but lay off of my blue suede shoes. Well, it's a blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes. Blue suede shoes, blue suede shoes. You can do anything.
During the first few years of the 60s, Elvis completes more films, including Flaming Star, Wild in the Country, Blue Hawaii, Follow That Dream, Kid Galahad, Girls, 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 It Happened at the World's Fair, Fun in Acapulco, Viva Las Vegas, and Kissin' Cousins. During this time, he released another album called Something for Everybody, which spent 3 weeks at number one. While some of the films to come out of this time were met with lukewarm reviews, Blue Hawaii proved a massive success. It earns recognitions as one of the best Elvis movies and is the top grossing film of his career thus far. Its characteristics of a non-cerebral plot, lavish scenery, lots of songs by Elvis, and lots of pretty girls becomes the basis for the Presley formula movies of the 60s. The album for the film remained on the charts for 6 months, including 20 weeks at number one. The album also yields a number two single destined to become an Elvis classic, Can't Help Falling in Love. Non-movie related recordings and hit records continued through this period, with Good Luck Charm hitting number one in 1962. As things picked up in Elvis's acting and recording careers, a romance began to bloom between Priscilla and Elvis. In 1962, Priscilla, now 17 years old, visits Elvis from Germany. They spend the time in Las Vegas. She returns again that same year for the holidays in Memphis. In March of 1963, Priscilla moves to Memphis while Elvis is filming in Hollywood. She graduates high school 5 days after turning 18. During these years, another national sensation is beginning as the Beatles take the stage on the Ed Sullivan Show. American music and pop culture will soon change dramatically with the British invasion of the 60s, much as it had after Elvis made rock and roll history in the 50s. The late 60s continue to be lucrative for Elvis's film career. He begins filming on many movies, including Roustabout, Girl Happy, Tickle Me, Harem Scarum, Frankie and Johnny, Paradise Hawaiian Style, Spin Out, Easy Come Easy Go, Double Trouble, Clam Bake, Speedway, Live a Little, Love a Little, Charo, The Trouble with Girls, and Change of Habit. In December of 1964, Tom Parker negotiates a movie contract deal that finally reaches his goal for Elvis to make $1 million per movie. This is all before Elvis is 30 years old. In 1966, Elvis has a renewed interest in music, which prompts him to buy a great deal of new equipment and spend his free time working on music at home. He begins working on what will become the album, How Great Thou Art. In December of 1966, Elvis formally proposes marriage just before Christmas to Priscilla, presenting her with a ring. Elvis's interest in horses becomes serious at this time as well, and he purchases riding clothing and equipment. He even buys Priscilla a horse for Christmas. In 1967, Elvis buys a 163-acre ranch in Mississippi called Circle G to accommodate his growing horse interest. Over the months to come, Elvis and his groups of friends and their wives enjoy spending a lot of time at the Circle G. In May of 1967, Elvis marries Priscilla in a private ceremony amongst a small group of friends and family at the Aladdin Hotel in Las Vegas, just after 11:40 a.m. The couple honeymooned for a few days in Palm Springs. Then they returned to Memphis to celebrate her 22nd birthday. They later dress in their wedding clothes and have a second wedding reception in the trophy room at Graceland to accommodate family and friends who were not in Las Vegas for the wedding. During the production of the movie Speedway, news of Priscilla's pregnancy is announced. 9 months to the day after Elvis married Priscilla, she gives birth to Lisa Marie Presley. It is a time of great happiness.
Only fools rush in. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. For I can't help falling in love with you.
Elvis's films in the 50s and early 60s were wonderfully successful, but as the 60s wore on, the movies, though still profitable, were not nearly as successful as they were before. He had hoped to become a serious actor, but Hollywood had other ideas, and Elvis went along with them. His opportunity to show his true talents as an actor have been few, and he is beyond ready for a change. By now, it has been more than 7 years since Elvis has appeared in front of a live audience. The 68 special is broadcasted in December of 1968. Elvis is reunited with two of his original 50s band members as they sit together on stage, along with several other friends and associates, for an informal session of singing, jamming, and swapping stories. There are also sequences of Elvis taking the stage alone and performing many of his great hit rockers and ballads. One can surmise that he pours out years of career frustration and pent-up creative energy into the performance of these songs. His natural talent, charisma, sensuality, and stage presence have not been diminished by his years in Hollywood. In fact, Elvis looks, sounds, moves, and grooves better than he ever has. In one of the jam session segments, Elvis speaks of the gospel origins of rock and roll. This segues into the gospel music portion of the show. Toward the end of the special, Elvis appears in a lengthy production number that includes song, dance, karate, and various situations. The number traces a young man's journey from a struggling guitar player through the challenges, dangers, and compromises on the path to his dreams of success and superstardom. Something is lost along the way. Once the dream is achieved, the man realizes that he remains unfulfilled and that he has abandoned his true self. He decides to return to his roots, doing what made him happiest, what he does best. The parallels to Elvis's own life are clear and deliberate, and his doing the 68 special represents his own return to his true self. At the end of the special, he sings a brand new song, If I Can Dream, specially written for the show. The writers created the song based in part upon conversations with Elvis about his own thoughts on what was happening during the turbulent 60s. His powerful and passionate performance of this song of hope for mankind is one of the most brilliant moments of his singing career. The 68 TV special is to become widely regarded as one of the truly great television moments in pop rock music history and was a truly helpful endeavor for Elvis's career. After the show, everything changes for Elvis as his career takes a turn back towards music. He pours renewed creative energy into his recording work and soon wraps up his movie contract and obligations, and he returns to full-time to concert stage, beginning a new and exciting era of his career. In 1969, Elvis begins recording in Memphis at American Sound Studio. His work here will become regarded as some of the finest music of his career. Elvis has excellent material to choose from, and pours his heart and soul into sessions. He works with a lot of top-notch Memphis musicians. The sound is fresh and gutsy. On every track, one can sense his creative excitement and energy. This is joyful work after years of movie boredom. 2 albums will result from these sessions. These sessions will also yield 4 hit singles to be released starting later this year and going into 1970. These songs are In the Ghetto, Suspicious Minds, Don't Cry Daddy, and Kentucky Rain.
Caught in a trap, I can't walk out because I love you too much, baby. Why can't you see what you're doing to me? When you don't believe a word I say. We can go on together with suspicious minds, and we can build our dreams on suspicious minds. So girlfriend, I know, just try to say hello, but I still see suspicion in your eyes. Here we go again, asking where I've been. You can see those tears are real, I'm crying. We can't go on together with suspicious minds, and we can't build our dreams on suspicious minds. We're caught in a trap, I can't walk out because I love you too much, baby. Why can't you see what you're doing to me? When you don't believe a word I say. We can't go on together with suspicious minds, and we can't build our dreams on suspicious minds. I'm caught in a trap, I can't walk out because I love you too much, baby.
In March of 1969, Elvis returns to Hollywood to film and record the soundtrack music for his 31st and last acting role in a motion picture. It is Change of Habits, starring Mary Tyler Moore. Later this year, Elvis booked a 4-week, 57-show engagement at the International Hotel in Las Vegas, which had just been built and had the largest showroom in the city. The show was a delightful mix of fresh arrangements of classic Elvis hits, exciting new material he has recorded, and a few covers of current and past hits of other artists, and charming onstage antics and sharing of personal recollections of his career. This engagement breaks all existing Las Vegas attendance records and attracts rave reviews from the public and the critics. Elvis's opening night is so successful that Tom Parker renegotiates his contract on a tablecloth in the hotel's coffee shop. In early 1970, Elvis returns to the International Hotel for another month-long engagement. This time, he breaks his own attendance records. The iconic one-piece Elvis jumpsuit debuts and karate moves are now an even bigger part of his stage show. MGM is on hand to shoot a documentary film called Elvis, That's the Way It Is, that will show Elvis off stage, in rehearsals, in the recording studio, and on stage. RCA will also release an album with the same title. He continues writing and releasing songs and albums and books a 9-city tour, his first tour since the 50s. In early 1971, Elvis and 9 others accept the honor of being named one of the 10 outstanding young men of the nation by the United States Junior Chamber of Commerce. It is a sign that he has achieved acceptance, recognition, and respect for his work. Later this year, he returns to Nashville to continue recording, but is forced to stop due to eye pain, which is diagnosed as secondary glaucoma. In late 1971, during another Las Vegas engagement, an award is presented to Elvis in his dressing room. It is the Bing Crosby Award from the National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences, the organization that also presents Grammy Awards. This award will later be renamed the Lifetime Achievement Award. Elvis is 36 years old. In 1972, Elvis releases a gospel record called He Touched Me. The album will go on to win Elvis his second Grammy Award. His touring success continues across the nation. He makes entertainment history by performing 4 sold-out shows at New York's Madison Square Garden. John Lennon, George Harrison, Bob Dylan, David Bowie, and Art Garfunkel are among the music stars spotted at the shows. Elvis's Vegas and concert tour career is hot during the early to mid-70s. He breaks attendance records in cities all over America. Record releases also continue. In July of 1972, the divorce of Elvis and Priscilla is formalized. They continue to be close friends. Though Elvis and Priscilla have joint custody of Lisa Marie, there will be no formal schedule of visitation for Elvis, and he and his daughter will spend time together regularly. Not long after the divorce, Elvis begins seeing Linda Thompson. In January of 1973, Elvis makes television and entertainment history with his Elvis Aloha from Hawaii via satellite special. The show is performed at the Honolulu International Center Arena and beamed via GlobeCam satellite to Australia, South Korea, Japan, Thailand, the Philippines, South Vietnam, and other countries live. The U.S. showing months later attracts 57% of the television viewing audience and is seen in more American households than the man's first walk on the moon. In all, it will be seen in about 40 countries by 1 billion to 1.5 billion people. Elvis commissions an American Eagle design for his jumpsuit for the show, his patriotic message to his worldwide audience, and one of the most memorable Elvis jumpsuits. Elvis is in top form physically and vocally. This is probably the pinnacle of his superstardom, one of the all-time great moments of his career. The soundtrack album is soon released and goes to number 1 on the Billboard Pop Album chart and stays on the chart at various positions for 52 weeks. This is his last number 1 pop chart album.
Consider all thy works thy hands have made. I see the stars, I hear the rolling thunder, thy power throughout the universe displayed. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, I shall come with shouts of acclamation and take me home. What joy shall fill my heart? Then I shall bow in humble adoration and then proclaim, my God, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art. Then sings my soul, my Savior God, to thee. How great thou art, how great thou art.
In 1973, Elvis begins facing health problems. Twice during the year, he overdoses on barbiturates. Towards the end of the year, he was hospitalized from the effects of a pain medication addiction. Despite his medical problems, Elvis performs 168 concerts, his busiest schedule ever. He continued the streak into 1974. Elvis's interest in spending time in the recording studio waned after recording 18 songs in December of 1973. Elvis did not enter the studio in 1974. Desperate, RCA released another concert record. This included a recording of How Great Thou Art that won Elvis his third Grammy. All 3 of his Grammys were for gospel songs. Elvis returned to the studio in 1975, but more attempts to get him back in 1975 were unsuccessful. In 1976, RCA sent a mobile recording studio to Graceland. Even in this setting, the recording process became a struggle. Though he was no longer a major presence on the pop charts, 5 of the albums released during these years entered the top 5 of the country chart, and 3 went to number 1. Elvis and Linda Thompson split in November of 1976, and he took up with a new girlfriend, Ginger Alden. He proposed to Alden and gave her an engagement ring 2 months later, though several of his friends later claimed that he had no serious intention of marrying again. By early 1977, Elvis was a shadow of the performer he used to be, overweight, mind-dulled, and barely able to pull through abbreviated concerts. By this time, he suffered from multiple ailments: glaucoma, high blood pressure, liver damage, and an enlarged colon, each magnified and possibly caused by drug abuse. On August 16, 1977, shortly after midnight, Elvis returned to Graceland from a late-night visit to the dentist. Through the early morning, he took care of last-minute tour details and relaxed with family and staff. He was to fly to Portland, Maine that night to do a show there the next day, then continue the scheduled tour. He retired to his master suite in Graceland at 7 a.m. to rest for his evening flight. By late morning, Elvis Presley had passed away due to heart failure. He was 42 years old. The autopsy found 14 different drugs in his system at time of death, 10 of which were in significant quantity. But it is believed that the codeine pills from the dentist had caused anaphylactic shock due to a mild allergy. Thousands of people gathered outside Graceland to view the open casket. One of Presley's cousins, Billy Mann, accepted $18,000 to secretly photograph the corpse. Ginger Alden struck a $105,000 deal with the Enquirer for her story of the death. Presley left her nothing in his will. Presley's funeral was held at Graceland on Thursday, August 18th. Around 80,000 people lined the processional route to Forest Hill Cemetery, where Presley was buried next to his mother. Following an attempt to steal Presley's body in late August, the remains of both Presley and his mother were reburied in Graceland's meditation garden. To this day, Elvis remains one of the best-selling solo artists of all times, with sales estimates between 600 million to 1 billion sales. He holds the record for the most songs charting in the Billboard's Top 40 at 115. He is also credited with holding the most albums charting in the Billboard 200 with 129. To compare, second place is Frank Sinatra, who holds 82. He holds the record for the most gold albums, 101, which is twice as many as second place Barbra Streisand's 51. In 2018, President Donald Trump awarded Elvis with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. With around 700 recordings, 31 movies, 2 documentaries, and huge touring and recording success, it is no wonder that Elvis Presley will always be known as the King.